All right, let's jump right into today's explainer. We're going to unpack one of the most incredible narratives ever recorded. Forget your modern political thrillers for a second because we are looking at an ancient text that literally has every single ingredient of a blockbuster. We're talking deep-seated family envy, covert assassinations, global empire building, and an absolute apocalyptic war. Today, we're breaking down a key summary of the Mahabharata. This was originally narrated by the sage Vaisampayana, who actually heard it directly from the great Rishi Vyasa, a figure described in the text as the first of intelligent men in the three worlds. It's a dense, fascinating piece of history, but we're going to trace the exact anatomy of how one single family's jealousy escalated into the destruction of an entire race.
Take a look at this dramatic opening quote. It really sets the stage for us. Vaisampayana is speaking directly to a monarch here, promising to reveal the real truth behind the massive fallout between two factions of the exact same family, the Kurus and the Pandavas. And you know what's really interesting about this? It points right to the inciting incident. This wasn't just some random family squabble. We're talking about a deliberate exile into the woods sparked by a rigged game of dice and a burning, obsessive desire for absolute rule. So think of this quote as our roadmap. We are going to trace the exact chain of events that turned brothers and cousins into the bitterest of mortal enemies.
Section 1. Roots of Royal Jealousy, the spark that lit the powder keg.
Okay, let's look at how this core rivalry actually breaks down. On one side, you've got the Pandavas. After their father dies, these 5 brothers return home, and almost immediately they become this massive threat. They're exceptionally skilled in archery, they have massive physical strength, immense energy, and, probably the most dangerous part, they become incredibly popular with the citizens. Then on the flip side, you have their cousins, the Kurus. Watching the Pandavas succeed makes the Kurus fiercely, obsessively jealous. You've got the crooked-minded Duryodhana, his ally Karna, and his deeply scheming uncle Sakuni, who is constantly fueling the fire. Duryodhana basically decides he wants undisputed sovereignty, and honestly, he doesn't care how he gets it. But luckily for the Pandavas, they have an inside man. The high-minded Vidura acts as their protector, constantly neutralizing the Kurus' evil plans and keeping the brothers safe.
What's wild here is how incredibly fast this goes from petty family jealousy to literal, brutal, attempted murder. Duryodhana specifically targets Bhima, who is one of the strongest Pandavas. He literally poisons Bhima's food. But the text notes that Bhima has the stomach of the wolf, so he just digests the poison right along with his dinner. It's crazy. But Duryodhana doesn't stop there. He waits until Bhima is asleep, ties him up, and throws him straight into the Ganges River. And as if drowning wasn't enough, while he's underwater, venomous black snakes bite him all over his body. But Bhima, he's an absolute powerhouse. He wakes up, effortlessly snaps his restraints, and just walks out of the water completely fine. The assassination is a total failure, but the message is crystal clear. The Kurus want the Pandavas dead.
Section 2. The House of Lack, a covert trap in Varanavata.
All right, so since slipping poison in the food didn't work, Duryodhana pivots to a massive covert trap. He convinces his dad, King Dhritarashtra, to tactfully send the Pandavas away to a town called Varanavata. The catch? The palace they're housed in is made of lac, which is a highly flammable resin. It's a giant tinderbox just waiting for a spark. But remember our inside man, Vidura? He warns them right as they leave the city. And this is where we see the Pandavas' sheer tactical genius. They play along. They live in this literal death trap for an entire year just to avoid suspicion. While they're doing that, they follow Vidura's precise instructions and secretly dig a subterranean escape tunnel. When the timing is perfect, they flip the script. They set the House of Lac on fire themselves, burning Duryodhana's resident spy, Purochina, to death, and then they completely vanish through their tunnel into the dark woods.
Just imagine that for a second. You're suddenly on the run in the pitch-black woods, constantly looking over your shoulder. But the Pandavas don't just survive this wilderness, they thrive in it. First, they run into a demon, a Rakshasa. Bhima slays it, ends up marrying its sister, Hidimba, and they have a son named Gatotkacha. Then, they move to the town of Ekachakra, flying completely under the radar by dressing as ascetics, or brahmacharians. While they're there, Bhima uses his insane strength to kill another monster, a hungry man-eating Rakshasa named Vaka, which basically saves the whole town. Eventually, word gets around about a princess in Panchala selecting a husband. They show up, win the maiden Draupadi as their common wife, and after a year, their true identities are finally revealed. They aren't hiding anymore. They emerge as this formidable force, totally plugged in with powerful new allies.
Section 3. Rise of the Pandavas, building a global empire.
So they come back triumphant, and it totally forces the hand of the Kuru elders. To keep the peace and prevent further issues, King Dhritarashtra and the elder Bhishma basically give the Pandavas their own territory, Khandavaprastha. They are explicitly told to go there and cast off all jealousy. And wow, do they ever. They pull off this brilliant military strategy and systematically turn their new territory into a dominant global empire. They literally divide and conquer the globe. Bhima subjugates the east. The heroic Arjuna heads north. Nakula takes the west, and Sahadeva, known as the slayer of hostile heroes, takes the south. Through absolute force of arms, adhering to truth, and putting down all sorts of evils, they bring countless princes under their total subjection.
I absolutely love this quote right here. The earth looked as if she had 6 suns. It so perfectly captures the absolute peak of their power and wealth. Can you even picture that? These 5 brothers radiating so much energy, virtue, and power that they mathematically change the brightness of the whole world. And despite all this insane new wealth, they stay completely calm and virtuous. But you know how these stories go, right? An empire that shines this brightly is basically painting a massive target on its own back. They're setting themselves up for an equally massive fall.
Now, right in the middle of this period of peak power, Arjuna actually goes into the woods for an 11-year exile. While he's away, he marries Subhadra. But here is where things get so cool and deeply mythological. Arjuna and Krishna decide they need to help the fire god Agni. And why on earth does a fire god need help? To cure his indigestion. I'm serious. To do this, they help Agni burn down the medicinal plants of the massive Khandava forest. Agni is so grateful for this massive favor that he gifts Arjuna some of the most legendary loot in the entire text. We're talking the excellent Gandiva bow, a quiver that literally never ever runs out of arrows, and a war chariot bearing the figure of Garuda. But maybe the most important detail here? During this fire, Arjuna saves a great Asura, a masterful architect named Maya, from burning to death.
Section 4. The Fateful Game of Dice. A Celestial Palace Lost.
So, saving Maya's life inadvertently creates the exact mechanism for the Pandavas' downfall. Out of sheer gratitude, this architect builds the Pandavas a mind-blowing celestial palace, decked out with every precious stone and jewel you can imagine. But of course, the wicked Duryodhana sees this magnificent building, and his old toxic envy flares right back up. He is completely obsessed with possessing it. Now he knows full well he can't beat the Pandavas on an actual battlefield. We've seen their military record, it's flawless. So he resorts to pure deceit. He lures Yudhishthira into a game of dice. But the whole thing is a total trap. The game is played by Sakuni, the son of Suvala, and it is completely rigged from the start. Through this one single, deceitful gamble, Yudhishthira is entirely stripped of his world-spanning empire.
And that rigged game results in one incredibly staggering number: 13. Duryodhana doesn't just take their kingdom. He sends the Pandavas back into the woods for 12 brutal years of exile, plus 1 additional year that has to be passed in total undiscovered concealment. That is 13 years of their lives, completely wiped away, all because of one cousin's blinding, toxic jealousy over a shiny new palace.
Section 5. Exile and Total War. The Return that Ended an Era.
Look at this timeline. It's wild to actually trace the exact escalation of this tragedy. It all starts in their youth with petty royal jealousy and literal poisonings in their food. Then it ramps up to surviving a whole year in a burning trap, the House of Luck. Then the Pandavas rise to total global subjugation, shining like suns across the earth. Then comes the devastating 13 years of exile lost over a rigged dice game. And that finally brings us to the 14th year. When the 13 years are up, the Pandavas return. They followed the rules. They legally ask for their property back. And the Kurus? They outright deny them. They refuse to hand it over. So war is immediately declared. The text tells us exactly how this all ends. The Pandavas do win back their devastated kingdom, but only after slaying King Duryodhana and completely exterminating the entire race of Kshatriyas, the warrior class.
Let's wrap up this explainer with a pretty heavy question that this text really forces us to confront. Yes, the source tells us the Pandavas technically achieved victory, but look at what they inherited, a completely devastated kingdom. When a single family's unchecked, poisonous envy escalates to a point where it literally requires the blood of an entire warrior race just to settle the dispute, we have to ask ourselves who really wins here. It's a chilling reminder of how destructive unchecked desire can be, and it echoes from ancient history right down to today. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into the source material, and keep questioning the mechanics of power.